I keep hearing about this paddle from Luzz that competes with the JOOLA Pro IV Perseus. It's been getting a lot of attention, especially since it comes in at a whopping $93 with code the new main. At first I didn't buy the hype, but after using it as my main paddle for about a month now I see what the buzz is about. Stick around for the full breakdown. What's up guys, it's the new main. Today we're taking a deep dive into the Luzz Cannon, one of Luzz's newest Gen 3 style pro level paddles. I've been using this as my main paddle for about 20 hours now, across drilling sessions and real games, and it honestly surprised me a lot more than I expected. In this review, we'll go over the specs first, and then break down how the Cannon performs on court in the areas that matter. The soft game, the volleys, the drives, the drops, resets, spin, power, pop, stability, and more. Throughout this review, we'll be comparing it directly to the JOOLA Pro IV Perseus, so you can see exactly where it stands against one of the most popular Gen 3 power paddles out right now. Let's start with the tech, because that is what makes the Cannon so interesting. It is a 16.5 by 17.5 inch elongated paddle. It is only available in 16 millimeters and uses a floating polypropylene honeycomb core paired with an EVA foam perimeter ring. It also uses a raw T700 carbon fiber surface, which is noticeably grittier than the Pro 4, giving you more bite on the ball and more spin potential overall. My paddle weighs 8.2 ounces with a swing weight of 122.7 and a twist weight of 6.6. I measure the swing weight and twist weight using a Graffiti swing weight twist weight machine. Here's how these numbers compare to the official specs that Luzz lists. When you look at the spec sheet, floating core, EVA foam ring, raw carbon fiber surface, an elongated shape, it reads like a top-tier Gen 3 power paddle. The Cannon hits a lot like the Pro 4 in terms of power and pop. I'd say it's just a tiny bit lower, but honestly, you're barely gonna notice unless you're switching it back to back. What really stands out about it is how much easier it is to control that power. The Pro 4 can feel a little trampoline-y at times. The ball just jumps off the face whether you're ready or not. With the Cannon, the rebound feels more predictable, so you don't get those surprise missiles flying long. That said, it's still a hot battle. If your timing's off, or if your mechanics get a little lazy, the ball can absolutely shoot off more than you expect. There's definitely a bit of a learning curve if you're not used to power paddles, but once you get the feel for it, the Cannon becomes super manageable, and it's honestly just a ton of fun to swing with. If you're pure power and pop, I'm giving the Cannon a 9 out of 10. Control is one of the most important parts of any power paddle, and the Cannon holds its own surprisingly well here, especially considering its high pop and high power. The floating core design helps a lot with the consistency because the power comes off more linearly. You get a predictable response that makes it easier to judge how much force to put behind each shot. It's not as easy to control as an all-court control paddle, but compared to other Gen 3 power paddles, it's noticeably more manageable. I always felt like I knew what the ball was about to do off the face. Because it's a poppier paddle, you still want clean mechanics, but once you get used to the response, controlling pace becomes much more intuitive. So for overall control, I'm giving the Cannon an 8 out of 10. Starting at the kitchen line, the Luzz Cannon really surprised me in the soft game. It has that Gen 3 feel, crisp and a little stiff, but still plush enough to keep things controlled and make it feel soft. Dinks feel really clean and predictable. The ball sits on the face for just long enough so you can guide it without having to soften your hands or stress about popping it up. You get enough feedback to know exactly what's happening, but it never feels too harsh. And just as a quick feel reference, not the full comparison yet, the Cannon feels more connected and firmer than the Pro 4. The Pro 4 can feel a bit hollow on soft touches, while the Cannon gives clearer feedback and makes it easier to shape the ball and add a little spin. So overall, the mix of crisp feel, stability, and really solid feedback made the soft game with the Cannon not just reliable, but actually fun to use. So for the soft game overall, I'm going to give the Cannon a 9 out of 10. Spin is one of the Cannon's biggest strengths, and you will feel it immediately. The raw carbon face is noticeably grittier than the Pro 4, and it grabs the ball really well, making it easy to generate heavy topspin on roll dinks, drives, and serves. The extra grit and longer dwell time gives shots more dip and margin, so you can swing harder without worrying about sailing long. Both paddles offer good spin, but the Cannon has a clear edge here. The surface simply bites more, and the ball stays on the face just long enough to shape shots more confidently. Slices feel controlled too. The stiffness and grit help you carve through the ball cleanly and keep it low. Overall, the Cannon delivers some of the best spin you'll find under $100 and generally competes with many $200 plus Gen 3 paddles out there. So for spin, I'm getting the Cannon a 9 out of 10. Stability and forgiveness end up being much better than I expected, only after adding lead tape. In stock form, the stability was about on par with the Pro 4. It's decent, but not quite up to my standards because I could still feel some twisting on off-center hits and when dealing with heavier, faster shots. Once I added a small amount of lead tape to increase the twist weight, the paddle felt noticeably more solid on volleys, counters, especially misshits. The EVA foam perimeter and boosted twist weight helped keep the paddle from turning in my hand. And compared to the Pro 4, the Cannon actually felt more planted and more stable with the added weight. The sweet spot was bigger than I expected for an elongated paddle. Not as large as full foam paddles like the Boomstick or the Luzz Inferno, but definitely better than most in this price range. It's only slightly larger than the Pro 4s, but with the added lead, the Cannon stayed far more stable outside the sweet spot, and misshits retained enough firmness and pop to stay playable. So for stability overall, I'm giving the Cannon an 8.5 out of 10 after adding the weight, and a 7.5 out of 10 in stock form. When it comes to drops, the Cannon has a really nice blend of plushness and connection on contact. There's enough dwell time to let the ball sit on the face for a brief moment, which makes controlled drops feel smooth when your technique is dialed in. Because the Cannon has more pop and power than most paddles, similar to the Pro 4, you still need good touch to keep drops consistent. But compared to the Pro 4, I actually felt more confident hitting harder, more aggressive dipping drops, especially when I was on the move or forced off my back foot. So for drops overall, I'm gonna give the Cannon an 8 out of 10. When it comes to drives, the Cannon makes it incredibly easy to generate some serious pace and power. The power and pop show up right away, but it feels easier to control than the Pro 4, especially on harder, more aggressive swings. With the Pro 4, I sometimes struggled to keep big drives in, but with the Cannon, I felt more confident hitting hard, low dipping shots without worrying about it sailing long. Power also feels like it comes off more linearly due to the floating foam core design. You get out what you put in, which makes it easier to predict and control the amount of power you apply to the ball. A small, compact stroke works best here because the paddle already supplies plenty of pop on its own. When you really rip a drive, the Cannon responds cleanly without feeling unstable or overly springy. Spin is a huge part of why the Cannon excels on drives. The extra grit and slightly longer dwell time makes it easy to add topspin. I felt like I could swing aggressively while still keeping the ball low and heavy. Serves are another area where the Cannon really stands out. You get easy power and that crisp pop without needing a huge windup in your swing, which makes deep, heavy topspin serves feel almost automatic. Compared to the Pro 4, I found it easier to control the trajectory and the depth of my serves. The Pro 4 could sail long if I applied too much power without adding enough spin. The Cannon also launches the ball at a slightly higher angle, which helps you generate spin without having to overbrush the ball. So for drives and serves overall, I'm gonna give the Cannon a 9.5 out of 10. At the kitchen line during fast exchanges, the Cannon feels quick, solid, and surprisingly stable for a sub $100 Gen 3 paddle. The face has that crisp, connected feel that helps you punch volleys with confidence without feeling overly springy or unpredictable. When it comes to punch volleys specifically, the Cannon has plenty of pop. Not quite as hot as the Pro 4, but definitely higher than most elongated paddles. That extra pop makes it easy to stay aggressive and put away high balls with a lot of pace. You don't need a huge swing to do that. The paddle gives you enough juice to finish points. Its high rebound potential also helps in fast hand battles. You can fire off quick counters, and the connected feel makes it easier to control how much power you're sending back. Roll volleys also feel great. The combination of its gritty surface and longer dwell time makes it easy to grip the ball and brush up without it slipping or popping the ball up too high. Compared to the Pro 4, which has a smoother face and can sometimes let the ball slide off when you brush up too quickly, the Cannon gives you more confidence and more spin. Overall, the Cannon gives you a really strong mix of pop, stability, hand speed, and control. It's not the most maneuverable paddle in tight exchanges, but compared to the Pro 4, it still feels a little faster in hand, and it has more controllable pop, making it one of the most predictable and confidence boosting paddles in this price range. For volleys and hand speed, I'm giving a Cannon an 8.5 out of 10. For resets, the Cannon outperforms the Pro 4 in my opinion. In its stock form, the sweet spot felt a little bit small for me, especially when playing at higher levels, and the shock absorption wasn't the best. But after adding about 3 grams of lead tape at the 4 and 8 o'clock positions, resets became much easier to control and place consistently. With the added lead tape, the sweet spot felt noticeably bigger. The paddle twisted a lot less, especially on off-center hits, and I could absorb pace much more confidently. It didn't suddenly turn the Cannon into a reset machine, but the extra weight paired with the Gen 3 feel made it easier to dial in that absorption and that power. You get immediate feedback off the face. You can tell right away if the reset is gonna land short or drift a little long. So for resets overall, I'm gonna give a Cannon an 8 out of 10. Durability is a big deal right now, especially with so many Gen 3 paddles, including the Pro 4, which is well known to have issues with core crushing, dead spots, and breakdowns. But the Cannon has held up really well for me so far. I put about 20 hours on it, and while the grit has still held up pretty well, the overall performance still feels about the same. It did take about 10 hours for the paddle to really fully break in. The power and pop increased slightly and the sweet spot opened up a bit once it settled. But I don't see any dead spots, no weird crunching, no early softening, which honestly isn't something I could say for a lot of Gen 3 paddles that cost twice as much. Now, since this is a Gen 3 build, I do expect it will eventually core crush. The real question is when, not if. But Luzz does include a 1-year warranty that covers core crushing, which is a huge plus considering how common the issue is across the industry. And the price matters a lot here. Even if the Cannon lasts the same amount of time as a Pro 4, I'd still pick the Cannon because you can basically buy 3 Cannons for the price of 1 Pro 4. That value makes durability concerns feel way less painful in the long run. So overall, for durability, I'm giving the Cannon a 7 out of 10. The Cannon delivers exceptional value. Gen 3 power, a strong sweet spot, impressive stability with a bit of lead tape, and far more spin than you'd expect at this price. It comes surprisingly close to the Pro 4 in overall performance, but when you factor in cost, nothing else under $100 really matches that. You're getting big power, easy pop, excellent spin, and reliable stability. If you want a power paddle with plenty of pop, strong spin, and surprisingly soft connected feel without paying premium prices, the Cannon is a total steal. So for overall value, I'm giving the Cannon a 10 out of 10. So before we wrap this up, here's a quick summary of how the Cannon performed across every category. So who's this paddle for? The Cannon is best for players who want a true power paddle without sacrificing too much control. So if you like driving hard from both the forehand and backhand wings, serving big, using heavy spin and shape, speeding up at the kitchen, applying pressure with fast counters and flicks, and you generally prefer that Gen 3 crisp, connected feel, the Cannon fits that style perfectly. It's also great for players coming from an all-court or control paddle who want more power, more spin, and more put-away potential without spending $200 plus. The only players I wouldn't recommend this for are those who struggle with very poppy, powerful paddles. It's more controllable than a Pro 4, but it's still a true power paddle and requires decent technique to get the most out of it. All right, now that you've seen the full breakdown, let's wrap this up with my final verdict, and whether the Luzz Cannon is actually worth picking up. In terms of value, the Cannon stands out immediately. You're getting Gen 3 performance and a build quality at a price point that's almost unheard of. After using it as my main paddle for about a month now, here's the honest truth. You get big, controllable power, excellent spin, and better stability than the Pro 4, especially when you add lead tape, all while keeping that clean, connected feel in the soft game. It's best for aggressive players who drive hard, speed up often, and like playing with a lot of pressure. If you're coming from an all-court or control paddle, expect a short adjustment period, but once it clicks, the Cannon becomes a genuinely fun paddle to play with. And if you're deciding between this and the Pro 4, the Cannon gets you surprisingly close for a fraction of that price, with better spin and more predictable power. So for the price and overall performance, it's absolutely a paddle that's easy to recommend. If you want to grab one, you can use the code TheNewMain to bring it down to $93. Thanks for watching, guys. If you find this review helpful, make sure to smash that like button. It really helps this channel grow. If you want more in-depth paddle breakdowns and honest comparisons, consider subscribing because I've got reviews of the Luzz Inferno and more coming up next. Let me know in the comments what paddle you want me to review next. I read every single one. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.